All right, well, here we are. I believe it's episode 9 of the How to Kick It podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Thomas Beard. This is also the first episode that we are recording for video. Hey, everybody. So we're going to see how it goes, and hopefully we can do some more of these in the future.
100%. And
Yeah.
you forgot to introduce the princess, the queen,
This is Chi.
my daughter,
Chia pudding.
Chia pudding, Chi, Chihuahua,
Chi
Chi
is the new one. That's
What-
us today.
whatever you want. But she's super excited to be here, to share the stage with us. We're at my Villa Black. Life is good. We've got a couple of ales. Just finished a little surf trip up in Bali on.
Really nice spot.
Life is good, baby.
Yeah, thank you for that invite too. It meant a lot.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got that alone time actually.
Yeah.
Just to connect and just
Yeah.
talk and get some waves and me just outperform you on all the waves.
We'll pretend that's true.
Insert clip.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put some footage in there as well.
Oh no.
So Tommy and I met about 3 years ago, give or take. Once again, the farm hostel, I think, is where we met.
Correct.
Yeah. A little bit of backstory with Thomas is he's the founder and CEO of Erotic. Is it erotic.co?
Erotic.
Erotic.
Mm-hmm.
You have a business partner these days, but primarily you are the artistic aspect or the creative aspect of the business.
Correct.
And primarily what I wanted the focus of this podcast to be is kind of entrepreneurship abroad. We've been talking a lot about adventures, growth, exploration, but a lot of it has not manifested for some of the guests into a life abroad. It has been a small chapter that a lot of individuals are working to bring some sort of income and living abroad together. And there's some really good success stories that we'll touch on. But yeah, give us a quick introduction about yourself. Tell me a little bit about you and the brand.
Me and the brand. So
We'll start with you, and then we'll move on to the brand.
yeah, we can start with me. I find this question difficult because it's like, where do you start? But I'll give you a brief overview. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Hollywood, not too far away from Andrew, but grew up in England. Got a Norwegian mum, Canadian-born dad to an English dad and a German mum. So I'm just a mix of everything. I'm not too sure where I'm from. I've been living in Bali for 3.5 years now, maybe coming up to 4 years. Been a jeweler for coming up to 10 years, jewelry designer. And yeah, started EROTIKK, which is my latest venture, a couple years ago. But up until that point was playing around in the custom jewelry field, learned a lot about gemstones, diamond identification, and all that side of things, and ended up marrying my gemstone knowledge with the jewelry design aspect, and here we are.
Here we are. So when I met you, Erotic was barely even in its idea process.
I don't even think it was an idea, mate.
Well, the idea was that you wanted to start your own jewelry line. And that was it. Well, I joked around and said you should call it Two Guns, remember?
Gunfingers, yeah.
Yeah, Gunfingers, Gunfingers Jewelry. Which
do remember that.
Yeah, this was the brainstorming idea. But you, in the jewelry world, you were already doing custom jewelry for like football teams, to the Americans out there, soccer teams, championship ring stuff. You were doing individual specialty items for people who just wanted something beautiful for their significant other or themselves. And you gravitated into erotic. So obviously when you're working with jewelry, there's a lot of moving parts. You have somebody who's going to do design, you have somebody who's going to do the CAD work, they're going to build the mold, they're going to do all these things. So before any of that even happens, you had to have some sort of business mindset, some sort of drive. Like, what were you doing that kind of made you want to start making money in that kind of capacity and wanted to make you start working for yourself?
There's so many ways to go with this. That's a packed question. We're going to have to loop back a couple times there.
Sure.
I think, number one, going back into childhood, my dad always ran his own business. So that was definitely ingrained for me from the start. But I'd say like the point of actually taking the plunge was like I studied a lot when I was younger, but studied like business studies for years. But I remember being like 16, 17, finished like 3 or 4 years of business studies. And I remember sitting in my old house in Eastbourne, which is a small town in East Sussex in England. And I remember like reading Seth Godin, Linchpin, which is all about being indispensable in business. And it's like a 200-page book, super easy read. And I remember reading that book and putting it down and being like, I'm more inspired to start my own business after reading this 200-page book than I have been after studying for like 4 years of traditional business education.
Wait, are you saying the education system isn't doing the youth right?
We can get into that. We can get into that. I definitely believe
Shocker.
in that. Shocker. So that was a pivotal moment in my sort of, I guess, inspiration to really like get going on my own. But the backstory, I guess, even further to that is that when I was still studying, I got a couple of part-time jobs, and I just really couldn't get on with it. Me having to sort of ask when I could go and take a drink of water and stuff like that. I just noticed this like huge friction point from a young age.
Right.
And yeah, luckily I listened to that. I just wasn't a great employee. Like people would be like, do this, and I've always just been so like hard-headed just to do sort of what I want when I want within a boundary, right? And it's like, or sometimes within no boundary. And it just from a young age, I was just like, no, this isn't for me.
Right.
And I actually remember being in this jewelry store, again in Eastbourne, and I was on like a part-time shift. I'd never worked full-time, I was always doing part-time little shifts here and there. And I remember talking to one of the ladies there who'd been there for years, and I remember talking a big game and being like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start my own this, etc., etc. And I remember just looking at me and just being like, why are you here then? And I just remember like the penny dropping. I just got chills even thinking about that, and I was just like, fuck, she's right. And then and then we went along from there. I ended up leaving because I thought I was going to go to university, saved up a bit of money, and that's really when I stepped into like doing my own thing.
Right.
Which we can get into.
Sure, but before then, to even go further back, you started hustling, as most people do. I have a backstory of hustling on Craigslist. I used to buy and sell furniture is how I got my like independent start. I love furniture. I know a lot about it, more than the average person, but what I really loved was like haggling and making a deal and understanding that a deal does not exist until the contract is signed, until the money exchanges hands.
Yes, sir.
And so there's a lot of optimism going around a sale, but I don't get any of that until it's a done deal.
Yeah.
So I remember you told me a little bit early on you were buying and selling stuff on eBay, right?
Yep.
Obviously, like, you got over it, you're not doing it anymore, but that was exciting to you and interesting to you on some level, right?
Yeah.
So what were you doing exactly?
So thank you for bringing that up. When I got started in the jewelry game, so around the same period of like stepping into my own sovereignty with regards to like buying and selling of jewelry or like trying to find clients, that wasn't like success at first run, at first sight. So in the background to that, I was basically just running around flipping secondhand clothing. That could be as simple as reaching out to homies and being like, right, you got this to sell, you don't want, you've grown out of this, let me go through your whole house, ransack it, I'll split you in.
Kind of designer stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Name brand stuff.
Growing up in a Western society full of what's it called? Materialism. Like you learn your fair few things, right? And I always paid attention to like garment quality and suits and tailored clothing, etc. So like I could pick out a nice garment. So yeah, I could be around a friend's house and pick out their old stuff and cut them in on the deal. I could be at a thrift store or a charity shop in what you call it in the UK, just literally flicking through rows of dusty old clothing, trying to find gems.
You develop the eye, you know what you're looking for. And it's about finding value in things that other people don't know that there's value in.
Everything's got value to someone, right?
Sure, but sometimes it's got a lot more value and some people don't know.
For sure. And I had a couple of those. Like I would get old suits for like £3, which is like what, $5 US. And people got no idea what these suits are, and I just knew they were like maybe £400 RRP or maybe even more. Like I had some £1,000 suits, like vintage, like 1980 suits, which I just educated myself on.
Yeah, that's completely over my head. I don't know anything about clothing.
But you can get an idea of something just by looking at it and the quality of the stitching and the feel of the fabric. And like sometimes, like when I was going around the car boot sales, what's the equivalent to that in US?
We have like flea markets. Sometimes they have like open storage unit sales as well.
Yeah. So that sort of concept, right? Where you're just going around looking at stuff. Like I would be on my phone, thank God for the internet, and I'd have eBay open. And then if I find a fabric which looks nice, or like an old suit which is in good condition, and I didn't know what the name was, I'm educating myself on the spot. I'm just flicking up eBay, I'm going to recently sold, and I'll type a name in. And then it might say suit sold for 50 quid. Then you just get into a negotiation, right? It's like, how much is this going for? £2. And then it's like, I know I've got a margin here, so I try and close the deal, whatever that looks like. Sometimes they start a little bit higher. Sometimes people know what the value is, which is just super annoying.
Yeah.
Just a little bit
they're
more
definitely not in the right place to get the highest price. If you want the highest price, you gotta go to the internet, right?
We used to have that conversation. I used to when people said like, oh, I want £25 to £50 for it, I'd be like, we're doing the same thing here, bro. Like,
Yeah.
if you want me to like take this on board for you, I'll cut you in on the deal. Otherwise, see you later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to answer your question with regards to like that whole side of things, it was just hustling on the spot as well. Like quick, like looking, all right, this is worth that much. I know I can flip it for this much. The space in between is mine.
Right.
And just early, I guess, supply and demand business stuff just being ingrained.
Considering that you're not doing that anymore, right? That's the truth.
Yeah.
It seems like you had more of an interest in the deal. You know what I mean? In finding something that you could essentially add value to or display it in a way that would make it more valuable to the end customer. So is that what you liked, or was it just an opportunity to make some money, and then this financial gain is going to help catapult me into my next endeavor? Or what was the mindset?
I think all 2 or 3 of those things that you just said. Number one, with regards to the end consumer, I like finding vintage, weird, just unique pieces. And then I would get messages from people being like, I haven't been able to find this thing for fucking ages. How have you got that? And it's just like, honestly, potluck. I was just in the right place at the right time, had the eye for it and picked it out. So that was rewarding. But to be honest with you, like, I'd be lying if I was sitting here saying that was the main thing. Like, the main thing for me was just doing something for myself.
Right.
And being like, I know that I can go out on a Sunday morning to the car boot sales. I can run around this thing for 2 hours. No one's up at like, I remember being in the pub the night before with the boys, and I'd be like drinking. I had to cut it because I was getting up to go to a car boot sale, which was an hour away at 5 in the morning. And like, no one really had that hustle and that drive around me. So I'd be just pulling up in my little like Peugeot 107, which, Google the car, it's like a little box car for a big guy. I'm just like, relatively big guy.
Like a clown car.
Yeah, like a little bit of a clown car, pulling up to these like muddy fields and just like, just pulling up with a bag basically and a iPhone full of charge, and just being like, all right, and a couple $100 in my wallet, and just being like, let's see what we can do.
This resonates with me so well, because I would go to estate sales in Santa Barbara.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun,
it,
just to explore, just to look around, look at stuff you would never buy also, and then you find out that there's a guy just like you that's buying and selling vintage something, right, or toy something. And then I would go to estate sales, and I would particularly focus on couches. I had a big storage unit, and I had the manpower to move them. Most other people didn't want to deal with the spacing issue, didn't want to deal with the work, so I found my niche.
I love that product because it's like, it's such a pain in the ass. So for you to own that, it's just like, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, furniture is a second love for me.
Because I used to leave that. I'd be like, even when stuff got too big clothing-wise, I was just like, oh, fuck this. Like, even a pair of Timberlands sometimes, I'm just like, it's too heavy. Like, I can't even be asked wrapping this.
Sure.
I know it's got value, but like, so
or
when it comes to couches, I'm just like,
yeah, couches was a big pain point for people, so a lot of times I would even get free stuff. But you also have to like,
please take this.
Yeah, but it was never really free for me, because I got to pay for transport, I got to pay for storage, and then maybe even like have to pay for delivery. So there's a lot of factors to it. So this hustling mindset that very fits into the persona of business in general, you carried that into while you were also getting started in the jewelry industry, right? Because you worked for people in the jewelry industry before you started doing your own thing.
Correct.
Okay. So tell me about what you were doing exactly when you were still an employee in the jewelry industry.
Yeah, so whilst I was learning up in London twice a week, and in my spare time, apart from messing around with friends at a young age, I would work part-time in these jewelry stores. So when I was in the jewelry stores, this is when I started to like merge my idea of what I could do next, because I was getting an education in diamonds and the value of stones, the quality of stones. And after working in the jewelry store for a while and really knowing my way around the gemstones, I started to notice that people were paying ridiculous retail prices for like subpar quality stones, basically.
Right, because they don't know any better, right?
Because they don't know any better. And like the thing with, excuse me, high street value stuff is that you're not just paying for the stone, you're paying for the security, you're paying for the shop space, you're paying for all the stock that has to sit in the window, you're paying for the staff training, and there's a lot of training because a lot of these employees aren't coming in with a gemstone identification background.
Is that what it's called? Like you get a certificate or a...
Yeah, so I studied with the Gemological Association of Great Britain, and it's called like, what's it called? Essentially diplomas, and you get like FGA, DGA status, which means you're a diamond grader and all this like fancy
What is the title, like a gemologist?
Gemologist.
Gemologist, okay, I didn't know.
Mate, fucking great. You didn't know that?
I thought that was just like
no
a
one
joke.
knows what that is. When I say that to people, people are just like, I've literally never even...
You're an expert in gems.
Yeah, gemologist.
But I would say anythingologist, like a chairologist, you know what I mean? Or a plantologist, but I don't know if those are things.
Who knows? But
yeah,
gemologist isn't a thing. Is a thing.
Is a thing.
Is a thing.
And you're one of them.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. Is that something you got to renew, or that just stays?
Technically, yes. So the title is FGA DGA are assigned to this certain school in London where you have to pay like a small subscription fee every year,
Sure.
and you get like the journals that come through of education. You get to uphold the status. I don't think I've done it in 2 years. Just haven't got around to it.
You don't need it really
Yeah,
at
I don't
this
really need
point.
it. It doesn't really
No.
serve me.
Yeah.
And I shy away from anything like that, which is too fancy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I got these letters after me, and I was like, fuck off, my head.
Right.
Am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
You just, I have kind of agreement with my mom actually about it because she watches the episodes.
Okay.
Is she doesn't like swearing out of anger, but
I'm super happy, Mum.
yeah, super happy.
Super happy.
Sometimes I think curse words are good to enforce or reinforce
And express.
and express the emotion that is involved. It's sometimes anger, but a lot of times it can add to even joy. You know,
Oh,
like
that's how I use it.
yeah,
for
and that's how I use it a lot of times. And I think she's kind of come around after listening to me probably swear on a few episodes. She's like,
Yeah.
oh, I never heard people use the word in that context.
yeah.
So anyway, hey mom, hope
I'll
you're
try to
watching.
tone it down, Mum. But
Yeah.
I grew up in England. Like, I can't. It's
It's just in the DNA
It's
at this
there.
point.
It's there.
All right, so we're
Looping back.
we're
where were
looping
we?
back to working in the jewelry shop, and obviously it just didn't suit you at a certain point. You
Yeah.
got fed up, another maybe conflict with authority. You're not getting your
Yeah.
value, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
worth a lot more. So where's the transition stage from working in jewelry shops, learning everything, getting your not genealogist, gemologist,
Genealogist.
yeah,
rubbing the
certification,
lamp.
yeah, and then feeling like you have a level of experience and understanding that you said you want to take a gamble and start doing something on your own.
Yeah, thank you, man. So I finished my gemologist diploma. I then got offered to go to Birmingham University, which is about 3 hours up from where I was living at the time, and that would have gotten more into like the actual science of it. So like looking at
Right.
gems under microscopes and getting really into like the crystal structures and that. And yeah, so I had applied for that. Now, everything was moving forward that I would be going to university in September. And I applied for everything. In the UK, you can get a government to pay for the university thing, as you can in most Western countries, right?
Oh, wow.
So I applied for all of that funding. And in the meantime, I knew that I was going to university. So I was saving up money, working part-time, and still doing my flipping elsewhere and other little markets here and there. One day, I just checked the post and a letter comes through and it's like, your funding's been declined. Because you've already got a diploma level qualification. Because what I didn't mention about the other school is the other school is private.
Right.
So the other school you have to pay up front for your funding. So because
Yeah.
you've already, I guess, displayed the ability to afford your own education, the government wouldn't allow me to go to university for that 1 year. Well, at least they would allow me, but they wouldn't pay for it.
Right, they wouldn't pay for it because they think that you have the means
Yeah,
to pay for
Exactly.
yourself.
You've
which
already, you've
may or may
paid for it,
not
right?
already have had the means to.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I remember just reading this letter and just having like no emotional reaction of like upset or anxious or anything negative or perceived to be negative came up.
Yeah.
And I displayed it to my dad, and my dad was just like, well, to be honest with you, I saved up some money for you to go to university. So the option's there if you want it, mate, basically. And I just remember looking at him and just being like, no, just give me a few days to think on it.
Sure.
And what I forgot to mention was a couple of weeks prior to getting this letter, or maybe a week prior to getting this letter, I'd left my job because I thought I was going to uni.
Right.
So I didn't necessarily leave. I knew I wanted to start my own thing, and I was doing my own thing on the side, hence the flipping of clothing and maybe a few other things in the mix.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah. Don't mean like that. I
No,
don't mean
no,
like
no,
that.
I'm just kidding.
Flipping in general.
Flipping in general. It's
like,
addictive. It's
yeah.
an addictive
That's the
treat.
thing. It's like once you know, like you can just go and get like a suit for £1 and sell it for 15. You're looking at like Game Boy stuff. I was doing Pokemon cards, like all sorts of random stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, we can maybe still edit that out. Where was I looping back in?
So you're going to university.
So
but
I
then
left my job.
Yeah.
Got the letter through saying we're not going to fund you, but you're still more than welcome. And my dad's saying, look, if you want to do it, I support that, basically. And I just remember just sitting, just feeling into it and just being like, this isn't for me. I don't necessarily want to get into the scientific side of things. The reason I actually got into gemology in the first place was because I like jewellery.
Right.
And I wanted to learn about diamonds from a young age, which we can get into that story. But yeah, I remember sitting my mum and dad down on the couch and just being like, right, I know you said when I'm out of education that I've got to pay rent, but this is what I'm presenting to you. I just saved this money up because I thought I was going to university. I'm now declining my dad's offer to fund it. I don't want any of that money, but I want to live rent free. And I can't remember what we agreed on. I think it was like 6 months, or maybe it might have been a year. I feel like it was 6 months.
Right.
And my dad was basically like, yeah, just give it your best shot, mate. And I had the money that was going to sustain me going to university for that 1 year, because I didn't want to work while I was at uni. I wanted to make the most out of it. I wanted to make sure I could study, get the best grades, and
have the
still
experience.
have fun, of course, which probably was 75% of it, 25% grades. Yeah, and then that just got me started. I remember sitting in my room and just being like, right, we got something to do here. And talking about the flipping of things, my first solo jewelry venture was going on the auction circuit in the UK, basically. And all around the UK, we've got these auction houses. So like, picture your like quintessential guy wearing a little like wig or something, standing at the stand with a hammer, going 200, 300, 400, yada yada yada. And I'll just jumping in the Peugeot 107. I'll be whipping around mostly East Sussex, Brighton, bit further out, and going to all these different auction houses. And using my education from the diamond industry, using my education from working in the retail shop, I sort of had like, again, this price disparative basically, where I knew how much a stone cost, I knew how much retail was selling it for, and there was this middle ground. And auction houses landed in the middle. So you could maybe go and pick up a £300 ring, which you could then flip to someone who owned a retail store for 500, who'd probably mark it up to 1200.
Wow.
Or something like crazy like that. So I was really just playing in the middle, and it was hella risky. And even to this day, like, I don't really know how I got away with it without making a loss, because I'd be taking on all the risk. You'd have to buy all the stock up front.
Yeah. Pay cash.
And I'll just, pay cash on the day, like no terms. And then you'd basically just go and have to hustle and sell that ring. So I was doing it for everything: diamond earrings, different gemstones, trying to pick up little deals here and there. One of the first things I sold was like a diamond halo, 18 karat gold cage, and it was like this big gemstone in the middle. I think it was like a sapphire. And yeah, that was like, I made like £150 in it or something. But then again,
what was the investment to like?
I think I bought it for 2, sold it for 350.
I mean, that's a good price markup. But I mean, as your first deal, it's scary, because you're like,
Super
I just
scary.
bought this like,
and I had no idea how much it was worth.
this 200-pound paperweight, right? Until it sells, it's not really worth anything. Yeah, I know the feeling.
I say no idea. I had a calculated, uninformed whether I was going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's where it really got interesting, mate, because I really just showed so much like tenacity during that time. Like, I'd literally just like get all my buys, stick them in like a plastic bag or a little like holder, and I would legit because I didn't have any like, I just have a couple grand's worth of stuff on me at the start, which was a lot of money to me back then. So I'd have it literally stuffed somewhere where someone couldn't see it, and I'd like walk into these jewelers, secondhand jewelers, retailers along Brighton, sometimes London, sometimes Eastbourne, and I'll just go in there and just pull out this bag of jewellery and be like, I've got this to sell, what do you want? As like a fresh-faced 18, maybe 19-year-old, like the beard hadn't come through yet, wasn't too sure on myself, bit baby-faced, and like I'm still thankful to all the people that gave me a shot, and then people would just whip out cash and be like, yeah, I'll buy that from you, I'll buy this from you, and I was just walking around doing my thing, like between jewelers, sort of playing them against each other a little bit, and just trying to understand, not so much for like in a bad way. It was more just to like educate myself. It'd be like, okay, this guy said he'd give me 800. I'm curious to, now that I have that information, is that what it's worth? Because again, I know what it's worth retail, I know what it's worth at trade, but I'm trying to play in this middle ground. So what can I really get from this as a pre-made, good condition, decent quality piece of jewelry, you know?
Is there like certification that goes into the jewelry? Like, do you have some sort of documentation? Because they can't just take your baby face walking up saying, hey, I have a $2,000 or 2,000 pound piece of jewelry. And they're like, no, it's probably fake. You know, was there any of that? Was there ever like, oh, your documentation might even be fake? Like, was there anybody who just didn't take you serious?
So, a couple answers to that question. Number one, like basic documentation of being a gemologist, I have that. And you have a card and all that stuff. So that was like, that was taken care of. I don't think I ever really like flashed it about too much though. With regards to gemology, that's the beautiful thing. It's like, if you show me a ruby now, I'm a little bit rusty, I haven't seen a good quality ruby in a while, but I'll still be able to tell you whether it's natural, synthetic, whether it's got treatments in it, and if I'm unsure, I can then send it to a lab. But I know what to look out for, which indicates that it's a natural stone versus a synthetic. So do the people I'm selling to. So without the certification, the eye tells you. Now, if there's anything there which might indicate a treatment, for example, a ruby can have like glass filling, right?
I don't know that.
Oh, I said right, yeah. Glass filling, and that will bring the value down a lot. So if anything looks funky in there, if I'm on my job, I'm not going to buy it. And if I fuck up and take it to them, they're going to notice it and not buy it.
Right.
Even if it's a chance that it might be an inclusion, because sometimes you can get like a cleavage plane in the stone, which might look similar, but yeah, to answer your question, a good eye will be able to tell.
Sweet.
But further to that, sometimes you do get a certificate as well. You get like a little laser inscribed on the girdle, which is what we call the side of the diamond, sort of like the
That's
line
called the
around
girdle.
the girdle, yeah.
Oh.
Microscopic. You wouldn't be able to see it with your eye. You have to use a loop 10
Mhm.
times. 10 times loop magnification, and you'll be able to see this number which corresponds to a certificate. And the thing is with certificates, again, that's a whole like black hole, because you have like top of the pyramid GIA certificates, which is like USA based, renowned lab, and they're like, you can trust their certification. Then you've got everything down to like some bog standard, like someone started it and just printed it off on a PDF, and it's like not really legit. But you know what to look for again. So like, I'm playing in a field of experts, right? So they know what they're looking at, and they didn't really have to. The only part they had to trust me on is the origin of where I got it from.
Right.
Because everyone knows there's probably a lot of nasty stuff going around with robberies and stuff with regards to jewelry. So sometimes I'll tell them that I bought it from a certain auction house, but again, I didn't want to give away too much because I don't want them to see how much I buy it for, because you can see all the results online.
Oh, okay. It's got like a story,
So if you really wanted to look into it, you could find out how much I bought, which again doesn't matter because I've got it now and you want it. So there's still a deal to be done. But like, there was ways around it. And honestly, like, I don't remember ever, like, no one ever explicitly told me to my face that they didn't trust me or they didn't give me a chance. So I was really proud of how I handled myself.
Sure.
And maybe some people don't care. Maybe some people had a good feeling. Maybe some people thought something but just wanted the stone anyway. Like, I just don't know. But I never had anyone really be like, where did you get this from? And really question me on it.
Nobody questioned you?
As a young man as well, I just found that fascinating, because it's like,
Yeah.
maybe that was a preconceived notion in my head that they would ask these questions or they wouldn't trust me.
Right.
They did.
To bring it back to the whole furniture is the only thing I have like experience with. All the time people would ask where it came from. I think furniture is a bit more intimate, especially anything with like a cushion. They're kind of a little more curious onto like, what type of hygiene person are you? You know, where did this come from? And I got out of like, a good get out of jail free card was it came from an estate sale, or it came from an auction, or it was brand new and it was when they stage homes. That was always the best, because it basically felt like brand new and people felt like they were getting a deal. So with all this stuff, it doesn't sound like you're really dealing in gemstones at the moment. So it kind of ties me back to the question, like, is it really about the jewelry, or is it more about the hustle and the deal and saying, hey, I bought this for one and I can sell it for two? Or, you know, some sort of hybrid of both? At the time, of course.
At the time, I'll link it back to what I was saying. Just anything that I can do just to have my own gig was just so empowering.
Yeah.
Because I knew that's the direction I wanted to go. The people I looked up to was entrepreneurs in the space, and people were running their own business, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I knew that's what I wanted. Like, again, like, it was just from a place of like, I know I'm good enough to offer my unique self perspective to the world. I back myself, and I don't want to be, I just didn't like what I was doing before. The glimpse I got of that world just wasn't for me. And for some people it's amazing, but for me it was just like, that does not suit me. It feels funny. I've always had a problem of being told what to do, which probably goes back to some childhood shit. But like, I just knew that wasn't for me. So to answer your question, it's just the self-empowering piece, just knowing that it could be anything. It could be the Pokemon card, it could be the diamond ring. I get the same feeling now. Like, it doesn't matter what the subject is, necessarily. Like, jewelry feels good to me, and the only caveat I'd add to that is the jewelry that I design, that's got an extra bit of flavor to it. Because it's like, oh, that's literally come from my head, or like an idea or a bit of inspiration, and then I put that out to the world, and then people are like, oh, this is dope. I'm like, okay, this is better than me buying a suit and selling the suit, but I still love that, not equally as much, but it's high, you know, like the same high. And so yeah, I think that's the answer to your question, mate. I think that's the answer to your question, yeah.
So, from my understanding, when we met, you primarily were focused on design, manufacturing, production, shipping of the football rings. That was like the big bread and butter. You had some personal clients you were doing some stuff for. So, like, chasing down these clients for football rings, having a very like order structure, history with the client, word of mouth, advertising on the website as well, I'm assuming? Yeah.
advertising.
So all that stuff, I mean, people can pretty much imagine kind of what that encompasses. And it's like you hope that whoever you already have a connection with, team-wise, that they fucking win, right? Because then they're going to need a championship ring. You don't want to
Repeat
be...
customers are the best.
Yeah, the winning customers, they have more money, they have more reason to have a championship ring. You don't really get a lot of second or third place rings, do you? Fourth place rings, fifth place rings?
And I agree that shouldn't be the case.
So erotic is something completely different than, I would say, the football ring industry.
Certainly.
Yeah. We'll put the link in the bio so people can find it. You see the Instagram, the website.
Yep.
It's super interesting brand. When you first started it, it was way out of my understanding. I didn't really get it. I didn't understand who the market would be. And as it has evolved and developed, it is something that I feel super appreciative to be connected to and have like some inside info and just to see what you've come up with. I'm like, you're gonna run out of ideas. No, you're not running out of any ideas. The things you come
too many of them.
Yeah, like day one, I was like, okay, how long can you run with this? And then like a few months later, you come out with this new thing, and it's similar but different. And then a few months later, you come out with something else, and I'm just like, so explain to everybody what erotic is, because you've transitioned to this primarily, right? You're still doing the football rings, but this is the main focus now.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so just lay it out. What is erotic? What is it about? What does it do? And also, I mean, we're tying this into, because this is like a travel podcast, living abroad podcast.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur abroad.
Yeah.
You've taken all this historical understanding, which we spent however long we've been recording talking about. Yeah. And now I want to talk about the brand, and I want to talk about the products.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Your questions are great, by the way, because honestly, like, there's so many. You brought up so many points there. You brought up the championship rings, and that got my brain going. And then you brought up erotic, and then you brought out the transition of that. And so let's keep bringing it back to this, because I feel like, I feel like there's a lot of little ways to go here. But simplistic terms, we'll start there. The start of erotic was a transition in my career from me creating stuff with a client's perspective in mind, e.g. the championship rings, e.g. the engagement rings and wedding bands, which we haven't really touched on yet. The backstory of erotic is everything that came before that, I was designing with clients. They would present me an idea, talk to me about an idea. They want to get engaged and they love this, this and this, go and make me something beautiful, that sort of stuff, right? Erotic started because I wanted to offer my own unique perspective to the world. And I really noticed, and this was like recent, let's say like maybe 3 years ago, I started having these thoughts. The people I looked up to at the time, or at least the people's lifestyles I admired with regards to work, life, the parties that they're going to, the people they know, the influence they have on certain markets, like those people were all designers. And the thing that really, really interested me, going even deeper than the jewelry, was like, I'll speak about someone like Greg Una, for example, who's a New York-based jeweler. He would be designing jewelry, but then a clothing company would be like, oh, this is a cool aspect, like we could do this with it, and then boom, he's doing clothing. And then he had a collaboration with Hummer, and like to design a bit of the car.
Oh.
And it's just like, design has got no boundaries, right? It's like creativity has got no, like, there's no block to it. It's like, if you're a jewelry designer, you can essentially be an architect. It's the same thoughts with forgetting the complexities of the building.
Right.
If we're talking about the creative aspect, it's like, design is just nebulous. It's just fucking everywhere.
Yeah, because you can also design digitally now. So that you just have all the free space. It doesn't cost anything other than your time, which is nowadays getting pretty expensive. So thank you for sharing your time with us today. So you're able just to create and throw away or put it in a save file what doesn't work for you, and then start to develop more of the ideas that suit your customers, your clients, or your collaborations as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about the technology, right? It's like, on my team, I've got CAD designers. Now they work on predominantly jewelry, but I could be like, throw this into a CAD and I could sketch out a house. Right. And they could turn that into a 3D living render. Maybe it even spins if they put the renders together, and I can get that going. Maybe they even turn it into a video which moves through the house. Right. Like, design to me is just taste. I've always, without tooting my horn too much, I've just always had like a unique, or what I perceive to be a unique taste. And
do you define taste as good or bad, or do you have more complex definition of it? Because simplistically, from my point of view, some people just say, oh, that person has no taste. I don't necessarily subscribe to that.
I think we've all got different flavors, and art is subjective. And I just think some stuff is absolutely gross, but other people think it's beautiful. But there's no judgment there. I'm like, that's just not for me. but I respect you. You know, it's like
What do you think about my piece here?
I could do better.
No,
I'm playing.
this is your piece. This is one of his very first pieces. This is one of the friends and family
Yep,
distribution.
First when I
Yeah, first run.
ones.
I was very happy to be gifted.
She's still looking
I don't
shiny.
know.
Yeah, gifted for sure.
Yeah, Tommy just put it in the polisher, the tumbler for me.
Yeah.
You took a
but
few
hand
years.
polished.
You took a few years off her.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
looking a bit, you know,
She's
worse for
looking good.
worn. She's looking fresh. She's looking younger than
She's
me.
looking
these
hydrated.
days.
She's looking young. She's looking sweet. But yeah, the point on artistic expression, it's just like that's the beautiful thing about this world, man. It's like so many people look at my brand and just be like, that is trash, and I welcome that.
Yeah.
100%. Like, you're never gonna be on like, no one's ever gonna like, sorry, your thing is never gonna be liked by everyone, and that's from a human standpoint as well. You could be the nicest person in the world, someone's just like, that's not for me, mate, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And an example I'll use of that is like one of the most famous designers in the world at the moment, arguably, is a guy called Virgil Abloh, right? He's just like the creative director of Louis. He's like come big in
Is he the guy who pushed that whole streetwear movement?
yeah, big streetwear movement.
Yeah.
Chia, pack it in.
As most people can tell, high fashion is not really my thing. I'm
But
working on it. I'm working on it.
My point being that I don't like any of his designs at all. I would never wear any of his designs. He had a couple things with Nike which I think are like cool, but again, I don't like them.
Sure.
But as a person and as a creative mind, I respect it fully.
Right.
And he's paved an amazing way, and it's just beautiful to see. But like, I don't like his design. But I like the way his mind works to an extent. I like the creative ideas, the creative aspects, his creative expression. But I don't like how it manifests in the product.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
I mean, something that was so big about him is like somebody who, like me, is not very much in the fashion world, could not escape his presence with Louis Vuitton, because he took it in such an opposite direction than what people were expecting that even I caught wind of it. You know, I think it was like in Bloomberg News. That's usually when I get my news. It has to be tied to a financial thing. I'm not a big sports guy either, but if LeBron James ever changes teams, Bloomberg covers it, I'll know about it. So same thing with this guy. He really, like, there was a lot of like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so great. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so terrible.
Yeah.
But either way, everybody's talking about it.
And again, it's more about the journey with him for me. Like, I respect the come up. Like, it's just a hard story.
Yeah.
So yeah, with regards to artistic expression, like, again, it is what it is, isn't it? Like, not everyone's going to like your stuff. And some people's it's going to be the best thing in the world. Other people's going to be the worst thing in the world, and that's beautiful.
So some people get writer's block, writers, I suppose. Do you ever get creative block? Is there times where you just feel like I have nothing in the tank and I need to reassess or take a surf trip or just clear your head? Is there a way to get in and out of that space, or is it something that you've found a way to kind of regulate and keep consistent?
I can't remember the writer's name, but he was speaking about the muse and like inspiration. He was just like, I only get creative when the muse shows up. Luckily, she shows up at 7 a.m. every morning when I sit down to write, or some shit like that. And I was just like, I agree with that mostly. I feel like if you just set the space, you know yourself, you set an environment, and you give your spell. And for me, it's like, I like to not have a lot on the schedule. If I want to sit down and think, but then the flip side to that is, you know how it goes, like with anything, like you can be in the shower and then boom, you just get lightning bolted in the head and something comes through. But to answer your question with regards to actual blockages, my life is quite well balanced, where, for example, we just went on a surf trip on this weekend, and like, that is so nutritious for me, just for my head, to get the space. So much stuff comes through, and I feel like my best ideas do come through when I do that. So I have to allow that to happen for things to come through. Right. To an extent, like I don't necessarily think sit down and
grind it out.
Grind it out. If you're really not feeling it, listen to that. But then I also feel like there's a sense of ownership there, and what's the word? I guess not hiding behind that like real creative mind thing of just being like, oh, it's gonna come to me. It's like there has to be some like self-ownership, I guess is the word. It's like I'm gonna work on this today. Like, I've got a ring which is 80% done, and it's like it's like based off the concept similar to one of our best sellers, because it's going to sell out and people like, we want more of them basically. So I'm switching the design up and making it better, because this is another thing, as like, nothing's 100% ever done. Like, in my mind, it's sort of like I release it and it might be like I love it, but there's always, you see something 2 months later, you're like, I would have changed that slightly, this and that, right? So I'm working on that at the moment, and I haven't really just taken the time to sit down and do it yet. But I know if I do, it's just like, if I allow that space and I just sit down and that's my intention, then I'll make it happen.
Well, it's nice to hear like how the work ethic can kind of create a space.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you very much.
I've still got this one to finish.
Cheers to our sponsor.
Bintang.
Bintang, if you're local.
Star
Bintang.
in Bahasa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've got an ale and a beer going.
And we have Kura Kura. You can find it all over these
drunk
days.
after this, man.
It's what day of the week is it?
How to kick it?
It's Monday.
It's Monday. Yes.
Happy Monday, everybody.
And we had beers on the surf trip. We're forgetting
How to
that part.
kick it.
Case study.
Yeah.
It's not always this glamorous.
No, it's not always this glamorous. This is just for the camera.
Yeah.
But
And
what I do like about what you said is that sometimes you do need to cultivate a space for your creative mind, and that sometimes needs to be a bit regimented. You know what I mean? You're like, maybe it's 7 a.m., maybe it's 7 p.m., but it's going to come up X amount of times a week, X amount of times a month that you need to facilitate that, and sometimes you need to think on it and grind through it to an extent, right? And then other times, you're like you said, you're in the shower and you need to jump out and jot something down. Yeah, so work ethic and creativity do have a relationship, but they're not exactly the same or mutually exclusive, in your opinion.
Yeah. I think work ethic really comes into it when it's like there's nothing else left, because we've all got the same amount of hours in the day. So I think that's where work ethic really comes into it. It's just like skill, creativity, all these other things. Once we're done with that conversation, we're left just with man hours. I think that's where the hard work comes in, because it's just like this thing ain't easy. Like starting a brand, being an entrepreneur, making money online, whatever you want to do, like whoever's telling you it's like a beautiful story is just chatting shit. Like,
yeah, the people that are like, subscribe to my channel, I'll make you 10 figures, or 10 figures.
It's difficult, man. Like,
I'm
26 now, and like I've been buying and selling stuff since 14. So that's 12 years of like hustling, really. Yeah,
I mean, that's an education you're not going to get in school.
Yeah, and
not that there's anything wrong with school. I went to college. I have a degree in economics, but
I'd argue there's a lot of things wrong with school. But
that's another conversation. That's another episode.
No judgment. Again, like if that's what's best for you, there's definitely great things. But
I think that school's a good option for a lot of people. But
100%.
I wouldn't say for everybody. Maybe not the creative
I didn't
type.
say it's a problem.
No.
I said there's problems with.
Sure.
There's problems with everything. Like,
Yeah.
So, anyway, we digress. What were we speaking about?
We were talking about just the creative space and stuff like that. But
yeah, work ethic.
Work ethic and things like that. So
it's going to take a lot of hours, basically.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of time and effort, but if you cultivate and make that space, you have to make time. That's the biggest thing that I hate with people. Oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time. Oh, maybe I'll find some time later. You're not going to find any time, but you can make it. You can wake up earlier, right? You can organize your day. You can make time for friends. You can make time for a podcast. You can make time to facilitate and create what you want to do.
Sure.
So that's one of my biggest pet peeves in life, is that I've heard people say, oh, I don't have enough time, I don't think I'll find time. And it's like, it's either that I am not a priority, or my project's not a priority for you, or that you just like to use that as a scapegoat because you don't want to take ownership of the fact
100%.
that you're not managing your time well.
And but a massive part of that, mate, is just hiding behind that, because like it's a scary thing to get started on your own.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, just consciously or subconsciously, they've got that thing in the back of the head going, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, you're not going to be able to do this, you're better off doing this, etc., etc.
Which may be true, but I think the true failure is never exploring that. I think never trying, my personal opinion, is never trying is the ultimate failure.
Yeah. Do you know what I think with regards to business in general? I think if you get enough years on the board, you can't lose. And what I mean by that is, if we look at sports, if we look at basketball, any other sport, pick your sport, pick your favorite player, they've got a time limit. And there's also a lot of genetic stuff that comes into that. Like, I'm not going to be able to ball like LeBron James. He's going to fucking destroy me.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I reckon I'll give it a go.
Good to know.
Point being, if I start doing business, practicing business, when I'm 18, 22, 30, 40, God willing, you've still got a lot of years on the board.
Yeah.
There are certain aspects to business. If you compartmentalize business, you've got your certain aspects, right? People management, advertising, product,
sales,
yada, yada, yada. You don't need to be an expert across the board to be living. It also depends on your goals, take it with a pinch of salt.
Sure.
But to set up a life where you're in control of your own destiny, not to sound too cliche, you can just try these things over and over again. And for example, with marketing, it's just like, okay, this didn't work, we'll go over here. This didn't work, we'll go over here.
Sure.
Keep changing, keep changing. As long as you're persistent You've got the courage just to like not listen to that person in your head that was telling you that you can't do it, etc., etc. You keep giving it time. Like again, if we were to rack up the hours that I've been doing my own thing, it's just disgusting, mate. Like hideous, but beautiful at the same time. Like it's just years of my life, just being back in the day when I didn't have any money for a team. Like I was on my own, like being in my room for 12 hours a day, like living with my mum and dad, like just reading, learning. You need to have that hunger. But like if you're just like persistent and again got the courage and you just got that belief, like I just feel like you can't lose. Because if you've done every day, or let's take an average week, 5 days a week, if you've done that for 5 years and you've been learning about everything, you've been trying stuff, you may have lost all that money in that time, you've learned so much. It doesn't take that much to really, especially if we're talking about traveling, where majority of the time you have a lower cost of living, generally speaking.
If you travel right.
If you travel right, like let's maybe using the backpacking route or a backpacking idea. And again, everything take it with a grain of salt, right? It could cost more depending how you're living.
Just being
but like,
conscientious about what you spend.
Yeah, like it doesn't. You can just do it. You can do it. You're not going to stop at 40 and be like, oh, I've torn my ACL.
Right.
Like you've got years to like perfect your craft.
Yes.
So that's the beautiful thing about business. It's like no matter when you start, you can get 10, 20 years on the board, and then by that time you've done your 10,000 hours and you're fucking laughing.
So
you might not be Jeff Bezos, but do you get me? Like,
nobody's Jeff Bezos.
I mean, you don't want to be Jeff Bezos. Anyway,
I don't think you want to be Jeff Bezos. No, I order stuff on Amazon, so everyone does.
We do Tokopedia.
Yeah. So while Erotic is only 3 years old, 2 years old, year and a half old?
Yeah, officially a year and a half.
Officially a year and a half old. Everything that has gone into creating what it is today is a cultivation of years of experience, where you came from, your education to a certain extent, as well as the grind, you know, flipping jewelry, flipping furniture, flipping clothing, and different things like that. I want to talk a lot about the brand, but first, this is kind of like a travel, living abroad podcast, and you don't really fit the mold for most of the guests that we've had on here.
Sure.
The biggest thing that, why I wanted to bring you on here, among other things, was that you, for some reason, had this motivation to go seek out, not necessarily Bali to set up your base for living and working, but you had a motivation to get out of the UK, and I think you had a relationship with Norway as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. My mom's Norwegian.
Your mother's Norwegian. So you kind of had this dual situation going on. I'm guessing you spent a fair amount of time in Europe.
Correct.
But what was it about Bali specifically that made you either want to come explore it day one, because you didn't know what you were getting yourself into day one, and then what were the aspects of living here that made it so appealing to continue to make the big move? Because I know you went back to the UK for a little bit, got all your stuff, and then finally came out here full time.
Yeah, sold the car, moved out the flat, etc., etc.
Said goodbye to the friends that, you know, weren't coming out.
Yep. So the starting point to that was I was in a place in my life where I'd been doing my own thing for a couple of years and no great success, but sort of like being able to buy my food and look after myself, and you know, I had that sort of sovereignty and that I guess I was owning my life in that way. It felt really good. And I was on the beach in Egypt with my mum. Me and my mum used to go to this place down the coast of Egypt diving, and I think I was on my second or third trip there. And I was just like hair down, growing my hair out back then, so it wasn't as long as it was now. It's sort of like hair down, chilling, pair of yoga pants on. My mum's a yoga teacher, and I just remember being on the beach and being like, oh, this just feels so good, like in my being, you know, like I just feel light. I feel like I feel rich. All the money in the world wouldn't change this moment. I'm living in like a pair of like £2 yoga pants and like a bandana, you know.
Right.
Smoking shisha on the beach in Egypt and drinking beers and diving and etc. etc. And I remember that just being like a pivotal point and being like, right, so now I've got the choice to go back home and do the whole London path, which would be probably maybe going back into employment. Didn't really want to do that, but it'd be a good start to go and be employed by a diamond firm up in Hatton Garden, which is a prestigious street in London, and doing the whole diamond thing, working my way up in that. The money would have come quicker because I could go straight into a commission job and I'm good at sales, etc. Or I honour that feeling that was on the beach in Egypt and I go in the other direction, and I didn't know how the business was going to work abroad. This is a real important point actually, because I had no idea how the business I'd set up in the UK was going to translate to online. There was no plan for that.
Right.
I just took a complete, just U-turned it
And this is taking the championship ring business
yeah, so that was like
primarily
championship
and
ring, custom
transitioning to that
jobs.
to working abroad, basically.
Yeah,
Like turning
'cause
your entrepreneur independent business and saying, hey, hey boss, that's
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I'm gonna go work abroad.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And an important aspect to that was like a lot of my the big deals I closed was face-to-face client work.
Ah,
So
so you have to pivot and do it remotely.
yeah, that
Or
was
try
that.
to.
What was the second part of the question? You were talking about why abroad, why Bali, right?
What was so appealing? I mean, there's the
Yeah,
generic appealing thing. It's nice weather,
yeah,
good food,
yeah,
good people.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
for
but
sure.
yeah, but like for you, obviously there's unique aspects that made it so appealing. And why did you,
Mm,
I don't want to say settle here, but why did you pick
pretty settled.
to, yeah, but who knows what the next years will
Yeah, for
come. Like
sure, for sure.
what made this so appealing for this chapter? You
Mm,
know, why didn't you go somewhere else? There's a lot of different places that are somewhat similar,
yeah.
different.
Hmm.
Just tell me about what you love about the
Yeah.
place or what made it so appealing.
Thank you for the realignment there.
Sure.
So after having that discussion with myself in Egypt, pulled the trigger, knew I didn't want to go the London route, was going to take the worldwide route. That was in October, maybe 2016, 2017. My plan was to leave February the next year, so 2017, 2018, whatever
Right.
that was. Had a couple of big, or quote unquote big for the time, championship ring jobs, which were like 50 rings, and there was like 3 of those contracts on. So I was like, once I finish this 100, 150, however many it was rings, I'm gonna go abroad. So then was like, okay, where am I going? And I knew that I wanted to surf. I wanted good weather most of the year. I needed some sort of community and access to Wi-Fi. I have travelled. I've travelled not as much in the traditional sense, maybe, but I've travelled relatively a lot, and I've had those situations where I'm trying to connect to something on a beach and I
Yeah.
just can't do the work. And the thing is, in those environments, when there's a beer calling or when there's some pretty girls on the beach or whatever it is that's taking your interest, like, and the internet's not working, you're going to go and
Yeah.
play in the other fields.
You're
You're
going
just
to
going
use
to.
any excuse to go have fun.
So an important aspect of my mindset was moving forward in a way where I could still progress in my career and trusting in that, whatever that looked like. And ultimately it's led me here, and who knows what the next 5, 10 years is going to look like. But yeah, so the points I just numbered: surf, weather, decent Wi-Fi, community, good weather most of the year. Pretty traditional stuff, mate, honestly. Like, and I just started looking across the world at what was interesting to me, and I'd seen images of Indonesia. I'd seen these beautiful turquoise blue waters, palm trees, big smiles on locals' faces, all the good stuff. And then I landed on Indonesia, and then that was a bit of a journey because I was looking at Ubud. Because I had no idea. I'd never been to Indonesia.
Right.
But I was like, Ubud, it sounded good, it had the whole spiritual community aspect. And like in my mind at the time, I was like quite young, trying to like figure out a little bit more about myself. So I was like, oh, maybe that's the go. And then I remember watching some travel vlogs of people who are, funnily enough, are my friends now. And they were like in Canggu, and they're like, oh, there's a spot down along the coast, it's got good surf, the Wi-Fi's good coffee. I used to be like hella addicted to coffee. Still got a Western expat community, but you're amongst the locals, etc., etc. And I remember just landing on that, mate, because another thing was like I could go to Lombok, but again, it was like a little bit.
Was Lombok on your radar at the time?
I
A little
believe so,
bit?
yeah, because
Oh,
I was looking,
wow.
I was sort of Google mapping, so I was sort of just like, oh, this is in Indonesia, Bali's the hub spot, and we've
This
got
is
these other
just
things
right
around.
right on the fringe,
Yeah.
basically.
I can't remember. It must have been Lombok because it wouldn't have been any other island because I didn't even go to some bar on that until
You
3
and I
months
went
ago.
you and I went to Lombok together, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the first time
That's
you were
the first
there.
time I've been there, yeah,
Oh,
for
okay.
sure. Yeah, I never went there. I landed on Canggu, and yeah, when I got here, it just fulfilled everything. Like, I just felt this is the place for me. And there's 2 aspects to this. There's my travel experience, where it's been majority of Europe, Thailand, places in Asia, America, grew up in America, Canada, Norway, Scandinavia, etc., etc.
Yeah.
There's also talking to people who have traveled the world.
Right.
And so many people land on this place and just say, this is a special, special place. And I feel
Yeah.
that, and I feel at home. I've never felt unsafe to an extent outside of like standard situations, really, maybe never. I've always felt welcome. I feel love, I feel openness, I just feel ease, I feel mostly peaceful. And the other aspects to the thing that's made me actually stick here is that there's just such a good silversmith community here with regards to jewellery. And I've got all the tools bar good gemstones
Right.
that I have in London, I have here. So my gemstone side of things, that still runs from Hatton Garden in London. But when it comes to the silversmithing and more of the design, CAD, that aspect, and me thinking about things and bringing it into the manifest, like that's the production side of things is here.
You can crank out a sample, no problem here.
So that's really why I'm here, because it's my personal preferences mixed with my career preferences, and they've had a baby and we're in Changi. Like that's.
And the baby's name is Chia,
Where
wherever
is
she
she
went.
anyway? Oh,
I think. Oh, she's here.
You're right, baby.
You can pull her back on screen if you want. I think she's just out of shot.
Yeah, she's cruising.
She's chilling.
Come here.
So obviously this is
See
2
it?
or 3 years ago when Erotic not really got its start, but it was in its idea stage.
Yeah.
And you were finding that this place satisfied a lot of those needs to help you facilitate that creative aspect, right?
Sure.
If everything else is taken care of, it gives you a lot of time to focus on the business, focus on developing something that's going to be appealing for you to keep your interest and as well to, you know, market and sell to others.
Yes, sir.
So we're kind of running out, not going to say running out of time, but winding this thing down. I really wanted to focus on Erotic, and you know, I've played around on the website. I've looked at just about every product that you've had, and it's just so different than anything I've seen. I've tried to find some sort of complementary businesses that are doing something similar, and I really feel like it's so unique. And it speaks to a lot of people, and you've redefined, if you really dive into it and explore the brand, you'll see that I think that you've taken a really interesting take on the word erotic.
For sure.
Yeah. I'll let you kind of expand on like what your personal definition of the brand is and the name.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about your collaborations,
Cool.
and after that I want to talk about where you see this thing going.
Beautiful.
So collaborations is
Yeah,
primarily
can you make
where-
a mental note of that? Because I just
I
end up
got
going,
you.
I need you to like anchor me back in.
I'll
'cause
do my
I'm
best.
up in the sky, and
So
then I'm
tell,
just like,
tell us about, like, you're not just creating your own jewelry with your own ideas, you're doing this collaboration stuff.
do you want to start with the erotic name?
Start with the erotic name. So we got to keep each other honest.
Okay.
So start with the erotic name.
Beautiful. So the brand name is Erotikk, which is spelled EROTIKK, right? That's a Norwegian word for erotica. The definition of erotica is literature or art intended to arouse sexual desire. So when I was thinking of the name, I looked at that definition, and I first looked at erotica, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting definition. So let me remove sexual desire, because although the name is that, there's multiple faces to the business. It's not just about sexual exploration and ownership, etc., etc. So, erotica, art or literature intended to arouse. I knew that we wanted to take a artistic approach to the business. What does arouse mean? It means to elicit a response.
Right.
So that all felt really good. So basically that's why I made the name, because erotica translated to Norwegian is erotikk or erotikk, or however you would pronounce it depending on where you're from in the country. And it just looked awesome as well with a double K at the end, and I was like, yep, fuck with that. So that's why we picked the name, and it felt good, Norwegian roots, etc., etc., and it felt like something I want to grow big, you know. It felt like almost homage to back home a little bit and stuff like that. Just felt nice. How it came about. So Bali actually plays a big point in that, because the piece that inspired the first collection was worn around Bali, and people would be like, where'd you get that piece from, mate? And I was like, oh, I made it. And they're like, I want one. And my business brain just starts ticking, going, okay, there's a market for it.
Yeah.
If people are telling me that they want to buy one, right? The reason that first piece came about was a bit of a relationship story. Me and the woman who was on podcast Voice a couple minutes ago, or 10, 15 minutes ago, still now my girlfriend, we were together like 2.5 years ago, and we had co-designed some pendants, and it was like pretty standard stuff, like a little medallion, sort of wolf, full moon vibe, and it had a diamond in it.
Oh.
Cute little thing.
I think I remember seeing that, but I didn't know this. I don't know the story.
Yeah. So, cut a long story relatively short, because of time, we ended up breaking up. So before I could give her this pendant, the relationship became nothing.
Took a time out.
Took a time out.
Yeah. We have some hindsight on this.
Yeah. And I remember sitting there with these medallions, and they were like solid gold and a couple of diamonds in them, and I was just like, up until that point, I never really wear jewelry. Like now I wear a lot of my stuff because I'm super proud of it, but I was in the mindset of just like pretty minimalist. I didn't want to wear a load of jewelry, and I didn't want to make myself jewelry because I knew it's like a slippery slope. Like once you make yourself one thing, you're like, oh, I can do this with everything, right?
I saw a dude at a cafe. He literally was wearing like 20 bracelets
stacks.
today, silver.
Yeah.
It was just like a weight. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even stop. I just kept
Yeah,
dragging.
that's just
I was like, I
uncomfy,
can't deal
man.
with it.
I just like couple rings, couple necklaces maybe, and I'm
This is
Gucci.
the most I wear. You know, half of it's yours, or half of it's from you.
For sure, for sure. So yeah, cut back to the mini medallions. I was just like, I've got a couple options here. I can scrap the gold, send the diamonds back, get a credit on my account, whatever. And I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna make myself a piece. I'm gonna like do some osmosis or transmutation or whatever the word is, and like turn this gold into something. And I just kept having this idea of a woman tied up from behind, basically like a silhouette. So you couldn't see the face. It was a bit mysterious. And I've never been like too handy with my hands, like with regards to sketching. Like I'm not like a great sketcher. I can get an idea out there, right?
Sure.
I'm not gonna paint you. I'm not gonna sit and paint you perfectly.
A Mona Lisa. Or
Yeah.
anything.
But yeah, I sketched out this silhouette, rough hair, how I wanted to be, and she was tied up from behind. And again, like to the onlooker, it might look more of like a kink or like a bow to sex, but it was more about the energy of like not wanting the woman to go, and it was like a desperate attempt to try and lock her up in chains. It was like trying to keep her close when really I knew that she had to go.
Right.
So the still girlfriend, ex at the time, leaving. That's what that piece signified for me.
Right.
It was like, I know she has to go, but I don't necessarily want her to. So it was just like a man's attempt to understand the feminine, sort of like tie her up. It's like we use our force, and that wasn't enough, basically. It was just like, I knew she had to go. So
I think that's an important note, and to actually kind of relate it back to life, is that when you look at something at a face value, we have this preconceived kind of thing that people do, that is, we just make a quick judgment so that we can just process and move on. So if you look at erotic, you're just like, oh yeah, it's some S&M stuff, I'm going to move on.
yeah.
But if you dig a bit deeper, there's a story. Like I said, you've redefined the name for your brand. These pieces don't necessarily mean what some people might assume that they mean. So if you're curious and you want to dig a bit deeper in life, I really think that this is a brand for you, because it's a great conversation starter. I get so many
100%.
questions. My family has asked a lot of questions. And to give them the opportunity to redefine what these words mean or what you're trying to convey, it's been a nice opportunity. And I mean,
100%.
yeah. So
yeah, that was the original piece, and then
Right.
getting into it, what I said about Bali, I was wearing it around. People were
Right,
like, where do I get one? I'm like, you can't get one, but I can make you one. And then that expanded into 11-piece first collection, which is now called the Classics Collection, because it gave rise to the company, and that's what we brought to market. And it went well enough for me to continue. And that was the idea of, that was the start of ideas coming from here and then coming into the manifest and putting it around people's neck.
So it wasn't like, I'm going to start this business and do this thing and this is what's happening. You kind of just almost by accident, or almost
completely.
just the stars aligning.
My whole thing's about curiosity, man. Like, from a couple of pieces in the story we missed out, it was like flipping secondhand stuff. Then I got into brand new jewelry because an ex-girlfriend at the time was like, oh, can you get a girlfriend at the time, 8 years ago, whatever, was like, oh, these people are getting engaged, can you make them a ring? And I was like, I don't really know how to make a brand new ring, I don't have any diamond links, but I'll do it. And then we got into the championship ring stuff because I was doing an engagement ring for someone who played for an American football team. And he told me about that, and then I was like, oh, how much is your ring? And he's like, oh, I get them from the States and it's this much. And I'm like, I can make them cheaper and I can make them in the UK.
Yeah.
And he's just like, okay, well, you make them then. And I got into, so like my whole thing is just like following this curiosity and just having the courage to jump into it and like not exactly know.
Yeah.
I've closed contracts back in the day and I was like, yeah, all good, mate, like 6 weeks, done. Hang up the phone and be like, no idea how to make this. But what I do know is I'm gonna fulfill.
Yeah. You're going to figure it out.
It's not about like, don't get me wrong, like I had an idea of how to do it to some extent.
And you had
but,
a
like,
price point in your mind.
had a price point, I'd done the basic stuff, but I didn't know how to make it fully.
Yeah.
But I knew I would.
Yeah. I mean,
So
you
it's just
paid,
like-
that's paying for your education in some resorts.
Just jumping in the deep end, mate.
Yeah.
So even with regards to erotic, it was just like a complete accident, really, in a beautiful way. But again, just the business brain linked up with the creativity brain there. It's just like you're wearing this piece around and people are just like, that's fucking insane. And again, I put it on my personal Instagram and I've never had a big following, but I remember the post of I put it up, I was like in a pool playing with it or something. And people were just like going nuts for it. Like more than me sharing a picture of my mum or something. Like people would just be like, this is insane, where do I get one, yada, yada,
It's
yada.
something
I'm
that
just
they
like,
can, get their hands on.
yeah,
Well, they were
and I was
hoping
like,
to.
okay, well the market's speaking to me. Like the market ultimately decides, right? We can think we have the best idea in the world, we can put it out there and put it out to thousands of people and then just get crickets.
So talking about having the best idea as an individual, you do these collaborations.
Yeah.
So how do these collaborations work? Who are these people? What is involved in the collaboration?
Who are these people? So our collaboration ethos is we honor all artistic art, all art forms, all artistic expression. A tattoo artist, a shibari artist, an R&B artist, a painter. I don't necessarily have those skill sets, but I can bring you into my world. Because I've been doing this for coming up to 10 years now. I know what I'm doing. I can turn a painting into jewelry.
You're taking different artwork and bringing it into the jewelry space.
Yeah, so it's really just coming down to like one thing that linking back way to the start of the podcast, you were talking about sort of like how erotic's evolving, and like the beautiful thing about when it's so attached to a person is it evolves with the person. Like the story I just told with regards to my girlfriend and that piece coming about, that's the energy that was there at the start is still very much a part of erotic, of course, but we've got all these extra arms now. And collaboration is just a massive, massive point of that, because I'm stepping more into my artist as well. Like I'm trying to like expand out and learn more things and become better, whatever that looks like, in all these different creative fields. So like I said, it's just stepping into someone else's artistic expression, honoring that, and being like, from a business perspective, I can take what you usually do. You're usually in a tattoo studio, for example. If you want to talk about Girl New York, amazing tattoo artist from Brooklyn. She was our first collaboration. Basically just approached her and was like, I'd love to turn your tattoos into gold.
Wow.
And she's just like, fuck yeah, that sounds dope. And I'm like, all right, let's give it a shot. And it went amazing. And then that, it fulfilled me across the board. Business-wise, great. Personal-wise, great fun.
Yeah.
Good money, good fun.
Good
response.
It's fun making money too.
Oh, it's great. It's great fun making money, but like the best moments in that, forget the money, were like people hitting us up being like, oh, this is out of our price range, and us being like, okay, we're going to bless you with one. Like that's like, fuck the money part of things. It's like, I'm so, at times, so money driven, but then when it comes down to it, I'm just like, taking the dog for a walk feels so much better than making whatever the number is, right?
Sure.
We all have goals, but like, one thing that me and you've been talking about on the surf trip is I'm trying to practice mindfulness a bit. So not just necessarily doing stuff with a goal in mind, but just doing something because.
Yeah.
But yeah, collaborations, it just fulfilled me across the board. I love working with people. I love seeing other people's art forms, man. Like her tattoo stuff is something I can never do, but I can make it, I'm not going to say my own because it's not my own, but like I can bring it into my world. I can express it through my form of adornment, my form of art.
You literally are taking a tattoo and turning it into jewelry.
Yeah.
Or you're taking somebody, with some of the other pieces, you're taking an art form where, what is the one, the Japanese guy?
Yeah, so that's shibari.
So he does
like a Japanese art form, which is all like
rope tying.
Rope tying.
And I wouldn't say submission, but it's...
There's a level of that. Again, there's a sexual element, but there's
contortion
also
almost, maybe is a better word. Contortion
manipulating the human body.
Yes. So if you look this up, we'll put the link in the thing.
Yeah, for sure.
He'll basically rope tie in individuals. I don't know if it's female specific, but that's all I've seen. And he'll contort their body with ropes. And Tommy has brought that into the jewelry space and has basically made a model of those individuals and those positions.
Yeah, which is his original artwork as well. So again,
I want one of those, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to sort that out.
And then what I do want to touch on is where you see the brand going. What do you see in the next, I know it's not a guarantee. Yeah, we got to wind this down for all the mosquitoes. But where do you see this thing?
Shout out the mosquitoes.
Where do you see this thing going in the next, again, it's not where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years. And I'm not going to hold you to any of this, but in a perfect world,
it's going to happen.
No, I'm just saying, in a perfect world where all things are constant and you have, free range, what do you see erotic being, or what else is coming out? Is there an erotic sub company, or is there something adjacent? And we got to wrap this up because we're getting bit to shit.
It's all good. She's here to protect us. Thank you, Chia. Where do I see erotic going? The idea for erotic's future is to become more of an art house than a jewelry company. Which looks super expansive, mate. It could be some super awesome restaurants designed in a crazy way. It can be definitely clothing, fabrics. I say leather goods. I don't actually want to use leather. I'd use the best quality, sort of like
the vegan
quote
leather,
unquote vegan leather.
Right.
Not that it needs to be labeled vegan. Just the best quality fabric, which feels like a leather, which isn't from an animal, just because I just don't think it's necessary.
Right.
Most of the time. Architecture, collaborations with more and more artists, getting to the stage in 5 to 10 years where we can maybe even sign music artists and be a real art house, and we're just churning out good quality, tasteful, in my opinion, art. And that could be, maybe we sign maybe someone writes an awesome fiction book, and because we've got the attention, because we've got the money, because we've got the connections, we can bring that fiction book to the New York Times bestseller. Maybe there's a fucking amazing jazz artist who I'm just like, how have you not got the platform that I think you should have? You're like the most talented guy in the world. Let's sign you in a way that isn't messing you up like majority of Hollywood is doing to artists these days. And how that looks, I don't know right now speaking into the camera, but I know it would be more authentic and more with the artist in mind, like our other collaborations work. And maybe we have erotic music. Maybe we have, well, not maybe, like that's the goal. We do have erotic music. We have maybe some sort of auction house, maybe. Like that could be interesting, where we just showcase interesting art perspective. We bring people on board, young up and coming designers, to help us turn stuff into fashion, accessories, jewelry. Again, with I love the idea of abstract furniture and chairs and just like, it can come into everything.
Maybe I can help with that.
Yeah. You know, a couple of people from the sofa game. But anything that my curiosity wants to touch, I just want to touch it.
Yeah.
Simple as that, really. And I want to have, erotic's essentially going to be a soundboard for my creativity and others. It's not even about me. Like, even now with my team, it's like Andrea, co-founder, co-owner, legend. She's got great ideas.
Wow.
And she's helping me work out with some stuff, and she's throwing them in there, and it's like great to see her creativity come through. Saskia, collaborations manager, another legend. She's got her ideas coming through, which super help out. And it's like, sometimes I present them with stuff, and they tweak it for me, because you can get so engrossed in the thing, you get tunnel vision, and you need to get up and get that bird's eye view to get the macro lens on it, looking down again, and be like, oh, but that's actually could be here and that, and I'm like, oh, thank you so much. So it's a group effort still. Like, sometimes it's me from start to finish, but other times it's not. You know, it's like there's a lot of hands touching it.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things about Erotic, is the collaboration aspect, that you're able to showcase somebody else's art and their sector of the world and transition it into jewelry. And it sounds like that's something that you still have a big passion for and maintaining in the future.
For sure.
That wherever Erotic goes, it's a team sport. You know, you're going to collab with people, you're going to promote people, and I think that's what's going to help keep it fresh and new, and it's also going to invoke new ideas out of you.
Exactly. It's like the collaborations we've just had would never have come from my mind, because I never would have done that tattoo style, and I'm stoked on them.
Yeah, believe it or not, this is a collaboration. This is to a meeting of the minds to a certain
100%.
extent.
And I love that. Like, I love working with people, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you giving us your time. The How to Kick It community is very much appreciative as well.
Oh yeah.
If there's anything else you'd like to touch on real quick, this is your time. This is your episode. The Thomas Beard / Erotic episode. We can always have you back as well.
Oh, for sure, we'll do that. Yeah. We'll do it at the new spot on the other island.
Absolutely.
I think without getting like too like motivational speech, it'd just be what I was saying earlier. I think if you want to like step into your own lane and really make something happen, like, it is just a time accumulation thing.
Right.
Like, if you really want that lifestyle where you are, I guess a lot of the viewers are traveling mindset. They want to have the mindset of traveling, and like one thing I've seen throughout my time abroad is like people come and go, right? And it's like, you want to be someone who, if you want to live this life, you want to be able to stay.
Yeah.
So setting up these things online now, we've got the technology, we've got the means. It just takes a little bit of learning, and although it's going to be hard work, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? So like, it's going to take time, it's going to take graft, it's going to be blood, sweat and tears. Maybe not the blood, but it's going to take time. But
maybe the mosquito blood.
Yeah, fucking hell. But business is a game of, the longer you play, the better you become.
True. And
there's no capping it at 35 because you've had an injury.
Right.
You can keep playing. So if you really want it, commit to it.
I think that's a great way to end it. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks, brother.
We'll do a proper hug off camera.
And we'll get another
Thanks again.
Yeah,
everybody. I hope you enjoyed the first video episode. That's it, man.